Let me tell you about a time I had to convince a group of skeptical property owners to invest millions of dollars in a project when the fact is they didn't trust leadership. They didn't believe that the work would actually get done. And some of them didn't even think that it was necessary. And so, in that instance, in that case, neither myself and or the board, we had formal authority. What we had was just influence. And not to mention a derelict pool. So I want to ask, how many of you right now as leaders, you are leading, but you feel like you're leading with zero authority right now? I want you to drop that in the comments. You see, I was on the strata board of my complex, and our pool area was a liability, if you wish. It was a liability. And so it was derelict, it was in decay. And as a landlord, at the time, I was seeing the ROI vanish because, hey, people were complaining. And so likewise, other persons who were landlords there, they weren't getting bookings because we had our properties on, short-term rental, Airbnb, and to name the others, Booking.com, those places. And so while we were getting some income, we could have gotten more. And so we knew what needed to be fixed. We know that the pool needed to be fixed. But here's the thing, the long-time owners, they were dug in. Like, because previous boards had burned them with shoddy work or, half-baked promises. And so they weren't buying into that. And so in banking terms, we weren't dealing with a money issue per se. We were dealing with a trust account that had been drained by previous boards. So before anyone was willing to invest again, we had to start making those intentional deposits. We had to make deposits of transparency. We had to show the milestones, the receipts, the follow through. They wanted the money to stay in the bank, or better yet, they wanted it to fix roof that really didn't need fixing. And so we could mandate the spend. We had to architect the buy-in. And so we held a town hall. We practiced transparency. We showed the quotes, the cost for the breakdown, and again, every milestone was visible. We didn't just promise results. We oversaw the project step by step to prove that if what we said was going to happen, it would happen. And so this is what I saw in an article recently by Fast Company. It says that bold corporate announcement often come before the real capability exists. And so leaders have to manage the space between ambition and readiness without losing trust. So what is this? What does this mean? This lack of trust from owners, from the property owners, is the exact mirror of skepticism with your employees feel towards new corporate strategy. And so here's the thing, when alignment is missing, strategy isn't a soft culture issue. It is actually a manager efficient lever that has snapped into. And so alignment is what creates lighter execution, it creates fewer mixed signals and measurable ROI, because alignment is basically reconciling a leader's leisure. So you have your leisure account, it is reconciling that. And so if one leader say X, but the manager approves Y, then what is going to happen is that this team is going to start feeling that deficit immediately. And so managers must manage that space between, again, bold ambition and actual readiness. There is an imbalance between if there is leadership strategy input and manager output, and they're not aligned. And so I want to welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence. For those of you who are just joining me, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Tanique Easy, leadership development expert, unlocking the efficiency of managers, that's first time mid-level managers, so they become more proficient at producing results without burnout. Let me know in the chat where you're joining us from, where are you watching from, and type hashtag live if you're joining live, or type hashtag replay if you are catching the replay, because we come back and we go through the comments and we respond to those. And so in 2026, our thought is MVP confidence is a currency. And so if confidence is currency, then alignment is the system that protects it. Because when alignment is off, managers starts to lead from credit. And that's when the burnout actually shows up like an overdraft. And so we have what we call the MVP framework that talks about aligning, that covers work like these, that talks about mindset, their belief. What do you believe? What are your beliefs in this? So, mindset, we talk about vision. What's your line of sight? Performance. Hey, Shireen, thank you for joining us. Shireen is in Kingston, Jamaica. Thank you for joining us, Shireen. Great to have you on this morning. And so that's the framework: mindset, vision, and performance. And all of that is interconnected, because if one is missing, then the flow is going to be off. The alignment is going to be off. The alignment is going to be off. And so here's what I've been seeing in recent conversations over LinkedIn is that managers, the conversation is repeatedly about elevating manager enablement from more training to system design in the flow of work. And so these are some of the questions that learning and development and talent management and HR and operations leaders are asking as they talk about manager enablement. And these questions are: what behavior needs change? Because if we're going to be moving from just training to system design in the flow of work, again, that's where we talk about the MVP framework, because it's not just a training, it's not just a regular training. It goes beyond the tactics and the checklists, and it gives the improvement of mindset. How does your team align with the vision? And how does that now translate into their performance in terms of their accountability? How accountable are they within the process? And so, what behavior are we trying to change? That's a mindset. What behavior would make the biggest difference? Performance. Where should that change show up in the work, the vision, line of sight? And so, again, these themes are tied to the language of the MVP framework. Managers, what do they believe? Do managers believe in the strategy and the standards? The vision of the line of sight. What matters most at this time? Is it stable? Is it clear? Performance, that's the reinforcement, the accountability. Is alignment built into the rhythm of measurement and accountability? What does that look like? And so let's talk about mindset alignment, the truth versus the title. Because here's the thing: mindset isn't fixed, it's finance. And you'll hear me say this all the time, because in truth and in fact, it isn't. You have to finance your mindset in order for it to align with the values, the vision, the performance, the standards of the organization, and even of what you are bringing to the table. And so, as a manager, strategy fails at the manager level when leaders treat their title as a badge rather than an influence tool. And so, here's the truth: every belief you carry is either a deposit or it is a withdrawal. The thing is that title based leadership makes withdrawals. So, title based leadership focuses on the badge, it operates in permission habits, it views standards as suggestions. So, I can either uphold the standard or I can, neglect it whenever I feel like. So that's when it becomes a suggestion. It's not a standard. It's not a brand integrity. It's not an identity. Hi, Lisa. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. And so that's what it does because title based leadership tries to spend authority it hasn't earned. While when we shift from the title based leadership to an owner mindset, to a business owner mindset, which makes deposit. It focuses on the influence. Hi, Jackie. Jackie's from Michigan. Thank you, Jackie. Jackie Halberg, thank you so much. Good to see you, Jackie. When managers develop that business owner mindset, or they shift from the title based leadership mindset and they embrace that business owner mindset. This is the transformation that we will see happening. They now start focusing on influence rather than on, oh, I am the manager, I am the leader, and you must do. They focus more on influence. How do we influence? How do I influence my team to get the work done in spite of all the challenges that we are facing? They operate with accountability. So, having that deposit of a business owner mindset, they operate with accountability. They view standards as a brand integrity. And so, when things are happening that will suggest that, well, this standard is not, I don't have to keep this standard. When they view it as a business owner, well, they're operating from, this is my business. If this was my business, how would I want my employees to show up? And so that's the kind of mindset that they operate from. And so business owner mindset earns trust through transparency. And so I'm going to share a little story of, you see, my first leadership role. And sometimes we don't think of these roles when we were younger, and how is it that they are now translating into what we are doing right now. You see, my first leadership role was a high school prefect. And I thought, I saw my friends with their badge and they had that respect. And so I thought that the badge meant I finally had the power. But I learned very quickly that the badge meant nothing. You see, students at that time didn't respect the plastic that was on my chest. They respected the person. And so, if for any reason I thought that because I had on a badge that says prefect and student council, right? And I was being unfair, the badge became a target. They would like, you see that prefect, and they would start pointing fingers. And so the title is the starting line, not the finish line. And so yes, we get the title, but that's just the start. It is when we adopt this mindset that, well, this is just the start, this is not the finish line. I have so much more to learn, I have way more to go, I have so much on this journey, I have so much growth to happen on this journey, and we recognize that, then we recognize it is just the starting point. And so to align a team, it really does help to adopt this business owner mindset, because every manager, if every manager starts to ask this question in every single business, if this was my business, how would I want the workers to show up? Because here's the thing, as a, as a business owner myself, I would want my team to start asking that question. I want them to operate from the mindset that this business belongs to them, because they are the ones helping to carry out the vision. And so when they adopt that mindset, they are able to help carry out that vision more clearly. Their performance, not just, no, it's not just lackluster, but they are performing at a higher level because they are thinking, well, if this was my business, then this is all I would want my employees to show up. And so we operate from that space. And so, what's the mindset shift here? What's the mindset shift? When we think about authority, and as a business owner, we focus on transparency and influence. What's the action that's going to come with that? We operate with accountability and ownership. The standard is viewed as a baseline for brand integrity. And when we start to handle conflict, we deal with transparency and accountability again. We don't do the silent treatment. And you've heard me talk about, and I'll be sharing that again. You've heard me talk about that. Because guess what? Earlier in my career in banking, I fast became a lead teller. And when my team didn't perform the way I wanted them to, because here's the thing, I was fast, I was efficient, and I wanted things to be done at a particular way. And when they didn't do it that way, I would give them the silent treatment, the cold shoulder. And you know what that result was? The result was that they reflected that energy right back at me. Have you ever had that scenario in your space, in your leadership, where it may not have been the silent treatment, but the energy that you reflected to your team members, it's the same energy they reflected back at you. And it wasn't the positive energy that I'm talking about. It's not the positive energy that I'm talking about. I'm talking about that negative energy that you would have displayed. And so in that moment, and now as I reflect, I am realizing that I was actually making a withdrawal. I wasn't making deposits at that time. I wasn't making leadership deposits. I was actually making some withdrawals. I was making withdrawals of trust, and I was making withdrawals of safety and motivation. And so here's the thing, when people on your team, when that happens, and so people will always do, when the account is low, what will happen is that people will stop investing effort. People will stop investing effort. And so I was actually failing to acknowledge the lived reality of the team. And so when managers resist strategy in the corporate story, it doesn't match with their daily friction, then you are not able to regulate. And again, if we can't regulate our own emotions, the truth of the matter is that the team is going to feel stuck. The team is going to feel stuck, and alignment is going to become impossible. And so, as I talk about alignment, because we're talking about, for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking about the law of alignment, why strategy fail at the manager level. That's what we're talking about today. And this is part 3 of our 3-part series. We talked about, the first one we talked about was the law of decision. And then last week we spoke about the law of consistency. Today, we're talking about the law of alignment and why strategy fail at the manager level. And so that's it. Strategy will fail because if persons are not aligned, then they can't define the vision clearly. They are stuck. Alignment becomes impossible. And so I want you to think about a time when you have a car, or you may know of someone with a car, or better yet, have you ever seen a car driving on the road and it's not straight, but it's slightly sideways, or you can see the difference, that you can see that it is not straight, it is sideways on the road. It's not literally going sideways, but it is set like that. It is going straight in the lane. It's supposed to be going straight, but you can see that something is wrong. That car is out of alignment. And so when things are not in alignment, when they're not lined up, alignment means you're going in the same direction, you're straight, you're on that same trajectory. Something is off. And so when we think about that, if we can picture that vehicle, and it may have happened to us as well, where we have our own vehicle and something needs to be checked. We need to take it to the mechanic for it to be checked out, but we haven't done so. We haven't gone there for them to do their diagnostic check and to fix what is wrong so the car can be aligned. One of the things is that when you change your tires, they always say to you, take it to the alignment stand to have it realigned, because you can change something, but your car is out of alignment. And so that's why they encourage you to take it to the alignment stand. And so, vision, when we talk about vision, when we think about the MVP framework, so we talked about the mindset. Now we're talking about the vision. The vision is the alignment. The vision is a part of the alignment process. So defining what matters most, that's what we're doing when we talk about vision and alignment. I want to pause and I want to welcome Melissa. Melissa is joining us from Jamaica as well. Thank you, Melissa, for joining us. Happy to have you with us today. And again, if you are listening and something is said that is resonating with you, drop it in the chat. If you are thinking about something as it relates to the law of alignment and why strategy fail at the manager level, drop it in the chat. We are here to learn from each other. We're here to grow with each other. And so when we talk about vision alignment and defining what matters, we establish, what we do is that we establish, hey Curtis, welcome, good afternoon, good morning. We establish a shared line of sight, a strategic necessity that prevents managers from falling into that exhausted state of constantly reacting to putting out fires rather than executing the plan. And so here's a vision alignment or vision alignment audit that we can use as it relates to what that looks like. And so if a staff, so I want to talk about, I want to share the questions because I shared questions earlier. And so let's talk about if things matter. Because if what matters, if you have an alignment and it matters to you, if you have a vehicle and it matters to you, you're going to go to the alignment stand, you're going to get that checked out. The vision of the company matters. And so because if what matters most changes every week, if you're a first time or mid-level manager and what matters most changes every week, then here's the thing, as a manager or as a director and your managers are seeing that everything is changing every week, then they're not going to be able to budget their time. They're not going to be able to budget their attention or their decision. And so The target now becomes a moving target. And what ends up is that this is where burnout starts to happen. They start to feel overdrawn. They end up with an overdraft leadership account. And that's where burnout starts to happen. And so they're doing a lot, but producing little. But if your focus is on the ROI, if success, and I want you to know that success isn't just a number, it's actually leadership consistency. Consistency means the total elimination of where the staff member, your team member, is going to be looking around for who is able to tell me yes for a standard that I know should not be broken. So, for example, for example, when I was in banking, right? And I'm going to use my banking stories, and I may use other stories. But when I was in banking, there were certain hairstyles when I just started that we couldn't wear. There was a there was a strictness, and persons would do like one or two blue streaks in the hair. And when nothing was said, they went a little further and they got a little bit more. And they realized that nothing was said again. So they kept doing it. And so that was, an employee, bypassing, because one manager would have said something, because here's the thing: we had an operations manager. She was strict, but you had other managers who weren't so strict, and they were like, oh, I see you changed their hairstyle, but nothing else was said. And so, because other persons are saying, oh, you change your hairstyle, and they come back with it the next week, and they had two more blue streaks. Nothing was said again. Come back the other week with another two. So it kept on increasing. And so that is where, that breakdown came in. And so let's call it what it is. When staff can shop for a easy yes, when they can break the standard and nothing is said, then what they're basically doing is they're moving from teller to teller to teller. I mean, in the banking world, they're moving until somebody approves that withdrawal. And so that's not really a people issue. That's actually a broken system of alignment. And so if we want to talk about, industry specific line of sight, we can talk about, for example, if you're in the fintech world, prioritizing technical agility through speed, then you can use the two-door reversible bug fix and the IU or the UI updates. And specifically to those things that impact the core financial leisure rather. And so again, this is where the article that I was reading from Fast Company hits, and it's a transformation. And you can't just say, here's where we are headed, because we can't just tell people, here's where we're headed, and that's it. You also have to name where here is. You have to give them a balance between where here is, that is the vision, and the distance that it's going to take to get there. How are we going to get there? How are we going to catch up? So, yes, I'm naming where we're going, but how are we going to get there? And so, success is achieved when leadership. Success is achieved when leadership feels lighter because the rules are settled. When alignment, everybody's in alignment. When the directors are in alignment and the managers are in alignment, so they're on the same page. And that boils down to communication as well, because we can say something, but we're not necessarily communicating. So we have to also understand that when we are communicating the vision is to have everyone in that space and they understand the vision clearly. They understand the vision clearly so that they can also share it and not allow the strategy to become negotiable. So again, I want to pause and I want to welcome those of you who have just joined us both on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And if you're watching live, type hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, let us know in the chat where you're joining from. Type hashtag replay and let us know the takeaways that you have from this session. Or if you have something that you want to add to the conversation, go ahead and add it in the chat. We come back after the session and we connect with third persons in the chat right there. And so let's talk about the P, the performance aspect now of the MVP framework. And how does this work with alignment? The thing is that here's where I believe HR, talent, operations, L&D can reposition training, excuse me, as part of a system design where structures seek to make behaviors, more transformational in training and to show that this is not the destination, but this is just a part of the journey. And so again, I go back to my banking days where no, I wasn't, doing everybody's job, even though I was fast and I was efficient and all of that. I wasn't doing everybody's job on my team. But here's the thing, I expected a certain level of efficiency. And what was happening is that I kept getting pulled into rechecking. I had to recheck when persons took their work back to me, recheck. Because the thing is that most of the persons on my team, they weren't originally trained by me. And so they didn't have that same kind of efficiency mindset. They didn't have that same kind of mindset where I would do A, B, C, D, E as I'm doing a transaction. So what happened is that at some point, things started to slow down. The work started to slow down. And it really left me perpetually exhausted. And so that is why when we talk about decision lanes for leaders, decision lane for managers, the tool of decision lanes is that where do I need to make certain decisions and where does someone else need to make certain decisions? And so when we talk about that, it is that we are operating as managers, as first time and as mid-level managers, we're operating from a shared playbook of execution so that things don't always come back on your desk when it doesn't need to. Or as HR directors, operations, talent, and or learning and development directors, things don't always end up back on your desk where the decision could be made by the first time and or mid-level managers. And so we call it the green lane and the yellow lane of decisions. So the green lane is you are authorized, swipe and go. Manager makes the decision, you execute alone, you do it, and you know that you are good. Whereas the yellow lane, you are authorized up to a certain point. You're authorized, but then you still have to inform your director of this decision. And so that is what happens in those two lanes. So the green lane, swipe and go. You have the green light, go. Yellow lane, you are authorized up to a certain point. You make that decision, but you also involve or inform your direct leader as to what that decision is. And so that's how we can align, we can help to align, moving from those spaces, helping to align our leaders, our first time and mid-level leaders. So let's talk about how we can do this practically. How can we do this practically on a weekly basis? What is this tool that we can use? I call it your weekly alignment huddle. It's just a 10-minute stabilizer. Hi, Racine. Thank you for joining from Maryland. And thank you so much for joining Leslie from North Carolina, my friend over there. Leslie, are you having the impact of the snow in that side? Um, and Racine, how is the snow on your side of the country? So let's talk about that weekly alignment huddle. What can you do on a weekly basis? It doesn't take long, 10 minutes, and you're good to go. This actually, I believe, will help to stabilize the team, stabilize how things are processed, and that alignment that we're talking about. First, when we come together on a weekly basis, 10 minutes just for the week on a Monday morning, we can come together on a Monday morning. No snow. Okay, awesome. On a Monday morning, what matters most? So that's the priority. What matters most this week? That's the priority. We get that all together and we have that. And that's what we know is the priority. Number two, we ask, how are we going to measure this priority? How are we going to measure this? And so we have our priority, then we have how are we going to measure it? Then we ask, what is standing in the way? What is blocking us from achieving this? What is blocking us from going after this priority? What is blocking us from measuring this priority? What is the block? What is standing in the way? What is that obstacle? And then when we get that answer, we make the decision what needs to be approved for us to move forward. How can we move forward? So that's four things that we can do. 10 minutes, a 10 minutes huddle as a first time or mid-level manager that can be done each week as you reconcile your own leadership leisure each week, each month, so that you know how things are moving along, so that execution doesn't become heavy, but it actually stabilizes and everybody on the team is now aligned. We know where we're going, what we're doing. Doesn't mean that things may not come up throughout the week, but when things come up throughout the week, we know how we can pivot as those things may arise. And we don't have to be thinking about, we don't always have to be stressing ourselves as to, oh my God, and feel panicky in those moments, because we have a framework. We know that our team is aligned. We know what's the priority, what's the metric, what's the block, what's the decision. And once we have those, we can always review. We always review. And so as we close, today, I want to invite, if you are, in HR, you are in talent, you are in operations, or you're in learning and development. I believe that these persons are uniquely positioned to move beyond administration and align with, you know, the finance to become an execution engine. This is a partnership, right? This is a partnership, and it's not a people problem. And so this is where we don't really treat manager training. I want to say we don't treat manager training like an HR expense, but we treat it like a leadership capital. And so the manager alignment tool, the three questions to audit your architecture as a manager. is mindset. Do leaders and managers share the same truth about the real problem? What's the real problem? Can we identify the real problem that's happening? Um, Hey Sundar, thank you so much for joining us today. Great to have you. Racing said not much snow here. Awesome. We're glad to hear that. Sundar says, if you had to fix only one level, mindset, vision, or performance to accelerate real behavior change in a technical organization, which would you choose and why? I would choose mindset because oftentimes, Sundar, in technical organizations, performance isn't the challenge. Performance isn't the challenge. And sometimes vision isn't the challenge too, but the one level that I would fix is mindset. And why would I fix mindset so that real behavior change can happen? Because everything starts in the mind. Because oftentimes our mindset is uh, is fixed in a particular way. And if we can change mindset, if we can get real transformational change happening in the mind, then we will see behavior, real behavior change happening in the technical organization. For example, I had a call recently with someone in a technical space within an organization, and the team is okay. When it comes on to the performance, they have it. When it comes on to the vision, they have it. But when it comes on to the mindset aspect of leadership, that's where they are lacking. The emotional intelligence, not knowing because they're so technical, they they kind of lack that emotional intelligence when it comes on to the leadership. That is the softer, well, we call it the soft skill, but it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's even a soft skill, but they lack that emotional intelligence part in the technical part of the organization. And so that's why we would start with mindset first, because oftentimes, as I said, behavior is good. They have well, not behavior, they have the performance because they are the ones churning out what's happening. Because you can see that the ROI is happening on paper, but there are still some mindset challenges because persons may not see themselves as leaders, persons may not see themselves as, okay, I can do this, or I can manage this team, or I can do this communication, or I can do X, Y, and Z within that technical aspect of the organization. And so that's where I would start. I would start definitely at the mindset, because once we shift mindset, the vision lines up, they run with the vision even more because they see what that looks like. What they now align their creativity, their values, and their purpose even greater to what the performance metrics looks like for the organization, looks like for them. And so once we shift that mindset, once we shift the belief, then we can definitely have real change within that organization, within the performance aspect. So I hope that brings some clarity to your question. So the other part of the alignment tool is vision. Can managers define what matters most this month and how it's measured? Performance. Do your rhythms, your lanes, and your huddles make it easy to execute? So when we come together, are we able to execute the plan easy? Or do I have to keep coming back to you to ask additional questions? Because when we have a huddle and we share for the week or for the month what that metric is, do we does the other team members get it, or do they have to keep coming back to you as the manager to find out, um, I'm not understanding? And so when we have those three lined up, when we have the mindset, do your managers share the same truth about the real problem? What are the real problems that's happening? It may look like X on the top, but it's actually deeper than that. So it may look like a performance issue, but it's actually deeper than that. It's actually deeper than the surface level performance. And so we go deeper. And so again, as I said, I invite, I invite you as HR, talent, L&D or operations, you're in operations, I invite you to this roundtable session that is happening on tomorrow, Friday, February 27th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard. And what is the purpose? The purpose is to, for leaders across industry, um, fintech, FMCG, finance, to come together and to co-diagnose what are they seeing in their own space and how can they share what's working and also what's not working and get support from each other in that space. And so please know that this is not a webinar. It's not a webinar, it's not a masterclass. It's designed as a working session. So it's lunchtime, take your lunch with you. And if you so choose, if you so desire to have your camera on, which we would love for you to do, but if you desire not to have your camera on, that is fine as well. And we're going to be doing this the Chatham House style way where persons are going to come and this is a safe space for you to really share what is happening in your space and how you can find solutions from other peers within different industries and how they are using it. Because here's the thing, it may, in your industry, the problem may look different, but we can use the same tools and allow them to filter across. And so I invite you to be there and to share in this space, because if we want abundance in performance, it's not about chasing motivation. It's about making the deposits, the shared truths, the stable priorities, the clear lines, and the cadence to hold the line. And so that's where it comes from. It comes from consistent, clear communication and follow through. And it actually helps to build the capacity of the organization. So I invite you to come on over on tomorrow and to share in that space. If you want to share, send me a direct message and I will register you and send you the Zoom link. So again, thank you all for joining. I choose performance because in technical algorithm behavior follows incentive and flow. Workflows design more than belief statements. Well, belief statements are not just for me, Sundar, and that's great that you choose performance. I believe that mindset is tied to performance because when we are able to shift a mindset, we are able to gain greater performance. And I know my friend Leslie might still be listening, but Leslie deals a lot with, those mindset traps that kind of traps us. And she can even underscores what I'm saying about mindset because we will have persons who are performing good. However, when we shift mindset, when we help persons to see differently, to think differently, not just about the incentive, not just about the workflow, but think differently about their capabilities, about what fears are holding them back, because we all have fears that hold us back. We all have some doubts. We all have some negative thoughts that are happening in our head space that holds us back. And when we are able to dive into those, we find that performance improves greater. We find that performance improve even more. And so, yes, behavior will follow incentive because yes, I have the incentive right now. I know that I'm going to get, say for example, a gift card. I'm going to get a bonus of $5,000. I'm going to put out the effort, but that incentive. But when I change my mindset around my belief systems about work, about how I show up for myself, about how I show up for the organization, about also how does my values align with the organization, then the incentive becomes a secondary. The incentive becomes secondary. And so it will happen in that space where, yes, you will have the incentives as a motivator, but when we have a shift in the mindset, then the incentive becomes a secondary to the behavior change that we want to see happening. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. If this resonated with you any at all, um, comment below, share this out, repost it to help others. And again, subscribe, follow me for these weekly leadership conversations. And remember that MVP confidence is currency. And if it is currency, it is what alignment is what keeps it going. Again, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence. I will see you next week as we talk about another in the series. Have yourselves a wonderful one. Bye for now.